Peter Hoover, what's up?
I got to tell you, man, today in my house this morning, we've been blaring John Mellencamp, Toby Keith, Johnny Cash, a little bit of Eminem, just all kinds of great Montgomery Gentry, great patriotic music, getting some chores done, closing some business, rocking and rolling, and having a great day. Good golly, God bless America.
Wow, that sounds awesome. I haven't
All right,
had.
was I supposed to introduce the show? This
Yeah,
is the
go.
Build and Grow with Real Estate show here on the Real Estate Hackers Network. My name is Judah Hooper. This is Josh Weidman.
What's up?
And I'm pretty pumped for what we're doing here with this show. And we are looking to talk about relative context of information that is worthy of real estate investors and realtors. We have 1,600 views so far on our shows this week.
Yeah.
And we just want to say that we appreciate the heck out of you guys so much. And we love that you come in and tune in with us every day. Steve, thanks for joining us. You did miss the show yesterday. We gave a shout out to you. And you are somebody who we need to get together with and have a beer, because we talked on some patriotic and military things yesterday that I would love, not just a military guy's insight on, an officer's insight on, a 20-year veteran's officer insight on, because I think that you've got some stuff that you can share with us. My name is Judah. I'm an executive with Slate House Group. We are a full service real estate company. I was writing up an offer last night at 7 o'clock. I was showing 2 or 3 houses yesterday and getting ready to list something and put it on the MLS. I'm rocking and rolling even during these patriotic times, and hoping that you are interested in buying or selling real estate. And if you are, give me a call.
Awesome. My name's Josh Weidman, and while Judah has been sitting around playing music in the background and already celebrating the 4th of July, I've been working my hands to the bone here. My phone has not stopped ringing since 8:30 this morning. My email was full of leads this morning. The economy is excited. Like, we had a lot of information yesterday that points to better and better economy. Here in Central PA, real estate is booming and it's hot. I'm a hard money lender. If you are looking to fund your next real estate investment project, give me a call. We are a direct lender. I got a call 10 minutes before the show started for somebody that said, Josh, I got a deal. I got to close Monday. Again, my lender backed out on me 2 weeks ago, and I got a 2-week extension, and I've been looking everywhere, and somebody just gave me your number. We are underwriting the deal as the show goes on. And this afternoon, I'm probably going to go out and see the property. And if everything looks good and everything's in line, we're going to be closing it on Monday. So we are a direct lender, which means that we can underwrite the deal in a couple hours. We can give you an approval the same day that you call us. And as long as the title work's done and everything looks good from there, we got all a short list of paperwork and information from you, we can close within 24 hours. So if you're looking to fund your next deal, give me a ring. I'd love to help you. And that's it. I mean, we're going to jump in today. I'm pumped about 4th of July. I love this holiday.
This is my favorite holiday. People ask, hey, Jude, what's your favorite holiday? And everybody says Christmas. I mean, I love Christmas. Christmas really is the most wonderful time of the year. But Christmas is like more of a season. You know what I mean? It's like basically the last half of December and even a little bit into December. Even a little bit into January. So I love Christmas. I love New Year's, like starting off the new year, getting, rocking and rolling. And I've always had jobs where the first 2 weeks of January was super critical to set up the rest of your year. And so I love setting goals and looking at what you did over the past year and deciding what you're going to do for the next year. So I get all that. Nothing to take away from all that. But I love the 4th of July. I love America. I think this is a great country. I think we are the greatest, richest, freest country on the earth. I think that we certainly have our problems, but there is no nation better than America, and there has never been a nation that is better than America. And no one does more good for the world than America. If you look at the good that America does, it is amazing. When there's a tsunami, that hits whatever little town, guess what they look for? How quick can we get U.S. aircraft carriers here to start delivering aid? When there is, even when our enemies like Iran or Iraq have a major earthquake, we go and help and support those people. And that's not like foreign policy, like manipulation, like, oh, if we do this, maybe we can get him to do that or whatever. America is the greatest force of good in the world, bar none.
In the history of the world. And
Amen.
before we jump into our 4th of July celebration, where we are going to dig into the Bill of Rights, I love history. And frankly, when I was in high school and even in college, I didn't realize how much I really loved history until I had the chance to start reading and researching for myself. And it's amazing. You look at the history, it sets up the future every single time.
I remember when I learned that history was more than just quotes and dates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, it was about like 7th or 8th grade. Like, before that, it was just like what battle happened on what date. And I like had a hard time remembering. And it was like, who said this quote? Who said that quote? And like, because I didn't know enough of history to understand the context of those quotes, the quotes were meaningless. And therefore, it was hard to remember who said them. And I didn't know who the people were. It's like, if you look at history like a Netflix show that's binge worthy, like as soon as you learn who the characters are and the themes and the motivations, it's like, history is very much like House of Cards. Like, there's all these different houses and they all have their different motives and motivations and back histories and different beliefs and sigils and words of, power and all this other stuff. And if you understand that for history, it really is very entertaining.
It is. All right. Before we jump in there, you just said something about the Christmas season going into the first and second week of the year. And I want to impart a bit of real estate knowledge and business planning knowledge before we get into our celebration here. And that is this. If you start planning for 2021 in December of 2020 or January of 2021, there is 0% chance that you are going to be ready to execute on January 1st.
Right.
We're going into the second half of 2020. Now's the time to set yourself up for 2021. Sit down and make your goals this weekend. Sit down and sketch out a plan for implementation, because guess what? You need to find somebody that is going to deliver on a certain marketing campaign that you're not currently doing, but you want to do next year, or you want to do twice the amount of deals next year as that you're doing this year. You need to increase your marketing. You need to have the money in line. You need to have the plan set up and ready to execute on January 1st. So, okay.
Yeah, I've always said, and we'll talk about this more in August, but I always said that August loans are what I use to buy my Christmas presents with, because you talk to people and you write pre-approval letters in August. They shop in September and October. They close in November. You get paid in December.
Yeah,
it is just. I mean, August leads is Christmas presents.
All right, so let's jump into content today. What we are going to be covering is a Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
I've had the chance over the last couple of weeks to kind of dig into this with my son. We've had some really awesome discussions. And look, what I want to talk about today is not just what the Bill of Rights are, like what that list of the first 10 amendments to the Constitution look like, but also what they mean and the background on some of them and how they came about. Like, why the heck are they even there?
Would you want to touch first base really quickly on the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists?
Yeah.
So when the whole reason we have the Bill of Rights is a great compromise as we were founding a nation. So America's founded, we beat off the British, and then we say, hey, what kind of a nation should we have? And there were people who thought the Constitution as it was far too liberal. Well, I was down at the National Constitution Center in Philadelphia and made my kids stand beside the picture of George Mason, as in George Mason University, and had them and took their picture with them because George Mason, and I forget who the other guy was, thought the Constitution was too liberal, and therefore, even though they were there and part of the Continental Congress that set up the Constitution, they weren't signers of the Constitution. So there was the Federalists who liked it. There was the Anti-Federalists who thought, no, even the government that you're proposing is too big. And so the first 10 amendments to the Constitution was a compromise to the anti-federalists who said, it was the Federalists who said, guys, like, we don't even think we need these 10 amendments, because if it doesn't say it in the Constitution, therefore the government can't do it. But if it makes you happy, we'll waste our time with these 10 things that should never, ever come up and that should never, ever be a problem.
That limit the size of the federal government. They're not the rights of the government.
Right.
They're the rights of the people.
They're negative rights. Exactly. They're negative rights. Yeah. Barack Obama said that disparagingly, and I'm not going to get into that right now, but he said, and I understand it, I would be willing to have a national dialogue about this, but he said, the rights that we have from the federal government are negative rights, things the government can't do for you. We should have a second Bill of Rights, things that the government should do for you. Now, I would want that list to be very, very small, but that's why, like, even though I'm pretty conservative in my views, I'm okay with the government supporting the post office, because I'm like, well, the government should protect our borders, supply a military, and provide a post office. Like, that's a thing that I'm okay with the government doing. And so it's important to remember that these are negative rights, and there are things that the government can't do for you. And listen, I'm not telling you Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior and that you should go to church on every Sunday morning. I mean, he is, but I'm not right now telling you that. In America, our rights come from God to us as individuals, and then we loan those rights back to the government. We hire the government to do some of those things for us. It's not that our rights come from God to a sovereign king and then we get some of those rights. The rights are ours first, and we give some of that power to the government. That's why the government needs, they can't just come and seize your power or seize your papers and look at your stuff, and you've got a right to a speech trial.
You're getting ahead of yourself. You're getting ahead of
I'm just setting it up that your rights are yours.
Right.
Your rights are yours. You give some of those rights to the government. The government can't do anything to Josh that Judah Hoover can't do to Josh. Josh can't do anything. The government can't do anything to Judah Hoover that Josh can't do to Judah Hoover. So the government is just another entity out there that has some collective powers from the people.
All right. Amendment number 1 is probably the most famous, right?
Yeah. Because it's big. It covers 3 big things.
Right. So I'm going to read the first one, right? It starts out with, Congress shall make no law restricting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. So that's the first one. Second one is, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble.
Peaceably assemble. Peaceably assemble.
And it doesn't, it's amazing. It doesn't say here peaceably assemble with a permit, which is really odd. And then to petition, to petition the government for a redress of grievances. So those are the 3 things, right? Freedom of religion and speech, freedom to peaceably assemble, and then freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances.
Right.
All right. So where do these come from? First of all, the freedom of religion came because we were really the first country that were a diverse group of individuals from a lot of different places, all parked here in the same country.
Right.
A lot of different political and ethnic and religious beliefs.
Right.
And so with those different religious beliefs, a lot of people came here originally to get away from the tyranny of the Catholic Church, the Church of England, and some of the other non-Protestant religions, right? Or not Protestant, excuse me.
Well, it was also going on here. The reason we needed this amendment was because it was going on here. Lord Baltimore, the guy who Baltimore City is named after, Lord Baltimore said, hey, in my colony of Maryland, you've got to be a Catholic. Not only do you have to be a Christian, you've got to be a Catholic. So it was already starting here in America. And we said, listen, The state isn't going to set up a religion, and the state isn't going to interfere with religion.
There you go. Exactly. And it's not that there's no overlap between church and state, and it's become that, and that's okay. I'll take that. But the idea was that the government is not going to force religion down your throat, and
there's not going to be an Anglican church in America.
Right.
The government's not going to say you've got to be of this denomination or that religion or this religion in order to hold office here. So unfortunately, I mean, there was churches that met in almost all of the original federal buildings in Washington. These guys attended church on every Sunday morning. I mean, they were so much more religious than we are today. It's ridiculous. We've really done much more separation of church and religion than what they thought were intended. Which again, like you said, Josh, is fine. I want people to believe whatever they believe because they believe it, not because it's forced down their throat. Same for my kids. Same for other people in this nation. I do a whole lot of preaching, but the last thing I want is people to believe what they believe because they ought to believe it or because they're forced to believe it.
Okay.
So here's the other thing that's interesting about this. So the freedom of speech here, I heard a lobbyist say one time that lobbyists are protected in the First Amendment. There are only three jobs protected in the Constitution: preachers, reporters, and lobbyists.
Hey, yeah, petition the government for redress of grievances. I get it. All right, so let's look at the Second Amendment, maybe the most controversial. And I love how concise and short this amendment is. Right. And I think it's so crazy, the conflict that comes about here.
Okay? I'll read this one. All
right.
People should be able to have guns so they can target practice. No. Isn't that what it says?
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And it blows my mind.
There's nothing in there about hunting? Dude. Nothing in there about target practice or having fun shooting guns?
The entire purpose of the Second Amendment
is to overthrow the government should it become tyrannical.
A tyrannical government, correct. To protect the people against the tyrannical government. In addition to that, the last part of this drives me nuts. The last clause, shall not be infringed. It doesn't say should be regulated or we can infringe slightly or with some hunting rifles, it's okay. But if they look like
I think we could all agree. I think we could all agree that freedom of speech does not mean you can just say whatever you want, right? Sure. I can't say the words, I would like to pay you $5,000 to kill Josh Weidman. That's speech that is also illegal. I can't say the words, hey, code? Bad guys, the U.S. troops are right over there. That is speech. That is treason. That is illegal. So just like I believe in some regulation, common sense, regulation, very, very limited for the First Amendment, I also believe in some common sense regulation. I do not believe people should be able to own thermonuclear devices. I believe that it would probably be a problem if everyday citizens owned an M1 Bradley, or not an M1, an M1 Abrams fighting vehicle. The Bradley's a different thing. So, you know, I'm all about that. I do, however, think that if you look at how many restrictions we put on the Second Amendment and how many restrictions we put on the First Amendment, they're rather distinct.
I think that when people read this, the argument, so the reason that this amendment is in place is that when the British, when we revolted against the British, the first thing that they did was go and confiscate guns from the citizens. That's the first thing that they did. They came and said, all right, round up all the guns, because guess what? If you don't have a gun, you don't have a way to defend yourself. There's going to be no uprising. You know, we were fighting against the largest military in the entire world, the largest and most dominant military in the world.
It's a good thing they were distracted by other little squabbles around the world. If they would have paid attention to us, it would not have gone well for us.
I think, though, there was some divine intervention, but we can cover that later.
Thanks.
But this the big thing here to remember, and really the point of contention with a lot of gun control advocates, is the first portion, the first clause of the amendment, a well-regulated militia, because a lot of people, and there is some argument to be made here that the intent was that the states had their own militia and that we didn't have a standing army. Like when the country started, we didn't have a federal army. And as a result, the idea was to protect themselves and to have these small groups or these small local militias. There's an argument to be made there. I don't think it's correct. However, I think that
yeah, that's I forget what they call that, but it's basically an introduction. I mean, constitutional scholars, I always forget when I read about this, but it's basically like it's the justification clause of it. You know what I mean? It doesn't really add anything to it other than just helping sell the case.
Yeah,
it's not exclusionary. It's anyway. Continue.
Amendment number 3. No soldier.
Least litigated amendment in the Constitution.
But what's funny is that prior to the Revolutionary War, English soldiers were housed in people's homes for free. As you know, since the colony had the right to be a British colony, hey, you got to take care of our soldiers. So right. You had soldiers that were unrelated people moving into your house. They got a room in the house and they got fed for free.
Here's the other reason why this is important, and I'm surprised that this hasn't come up yet with, Alexa and all these other, devices that now live in our house. The other reason you didn't want soldiers quartered in your house is because if I lived in Josh's house, if I lived in Josh's spare bedroom, I would know who Josh is talking to. I can overhear conversations. I know who's coming and going. I know when Josh is coming and going and other things like that. So yeah. Half the reason the reason this is an amendment and not just a law or a regulation or the reason that they can't listen, there's more than just the burden of it, right? Because if it was just a burden of it, it would be like eminent domain, which we're going to get to, hopefully, where the government can take your property as long as they compensate you for it, right? Yeah. So if it was just compensation and just a burden, this third amendment would say, if the government forces you to house soldiers, they must compensate you for the space and the food. But yeah. They say the government can't put people in your house, which means it's got to be about more than just that, which is why we should worry about the government spying on us, because we worried back then about the government spying on us, and we need to be concerned today about the government spying on us.
Amendment 4, the right of people to secure in their person houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated, and no warrants shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized.
Particularly. You've got to be very particular about what it is that you're doing and who it is that you're searching and seizing.
This amendment is responsible for the criminality of marijuana in the entire country of the United States. This is the sole reason. In the 1960s, we had a bunch of revolutionaries that were trying to change the country. And
I can't believe you went here.
What's that?
I can't believe you went here. Yeah, there was a bunch of commies back then.
And what happened was the government wanted a way to get in and infiltrate some of these groups and figure out what the heck they were doing, like the Black Panther Party, like the hippie movement, and all that kind of stuff. And so what they did is they criminalized possession of marijuana. Well, guess what? That opened the door. These groups, a lot of them smoked. Well,
100% is a lot. Yes, that is. I will grant you that.
Whatever the percent is, but I mean, I got a problem with that, with criminalization of with marijuana, just because of the way this went down in the 1960s, and it opened the door for all kinds of mess related to the drug war and all the other stuff that's going on. Yeah, I mean, this is a really important amendment for a lot of different reasons. Unlawful search and seizure is a big part. It has become a, I think, a pretty controversial part of some of the things that go on in this country.
I think it's interesting that they list papers, because
Right.
so if we can change the definition of sex to include how you identify, I think it is very easy to change the definition of sex to or gender or excuse me, papers whew, to text messages, emails, IMs, those types of things. I think we need to be just as secure in those things as would be our papers, and that
Well,
is not always the case.
that's 100% been covered. I mean, the FISA warrants are supposed to be there to protect Americans for unlawful snooping around. I mean,
Right,
it's already been covered. It's already been litigated.
right.
Yeah. All right. So that's unlawful search and seizure. Amendment number 5. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless presented to, or in gee whiz, unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in the cases arising in the land or naval forces or in a militia when in actual service at the time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject to the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be witness against himself or be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Holy crap, that's like the kitchen sink.
Yeah, absolutely. So basically, if you're going to put somebody on trial, on a murder trial, we've got to get a grand jury involved. We can't just have a federal prosecutor who wants to get reelection, bring those charges. We've got to make sure that there's a grand jury indictment. Also, the double jeopardy thing is important. If you
Yep.
are proven innocent, we would rather. Here's one of the things that's great about America: we would rather 100 guilty people go free than one innocent person go
Yep.
to jail. And I believe those are our rates, by the way. I mean, you can find a whole bunch of people who now after DNA exculpatory evidence, were believed to be put to death, improperly and whatever. Hey, our system is not perfect, but we go far above and beyond to try and innocent until proven guilty. The other thing that's always interesting, it's always been interested here to me, is you can't bear testimony against yourself. So you can't stand Josh up there on the stand and say, "Hey, Josh, did you kill the dude?" You can always claim the Fifth Amendment protection,
Yep.
not to bear witness against yourself. But that also applies to your spouse, which is why some people fight as hard as they do on the definition of marriage.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So that's the Fifth Amendment. It's a big one. It covers a lot of things.
And this is where it talks about property being taken without just compensation. I'm
And
surprised that this is all in one amendment because, the First Amendment, those things kind of go together.
yeah,
There's a lot of things here that I'm kind of surprised. Just like the Ninth and 10th Amendment almost could be one amendment, I'm always surprised that the Fifth Amendment isn't two separate amendments.
well, and there are things in the Fourth and Fifth Amendment that kind of coincide too. When you're talking about seizures, eminent domain, things like that. I think there's a real problem with some of the court cases that have been found where, especially with like drug seizures. I mean, yeah, like there's Philadelphia is the most egregious when it comes to seizure of property related to drug cases. But I mean, there have been multiple situations, unlike your person, where you are assumed innocent until proven guilty. With
Yeah.
property, it's
Yeah.
the other way around. You're assumed guilty until
You've got
proven.
to prove, oh, we think you're a drug dealer, Josh. So prove that you didn't buy that boat with drug money. And we're just going to go ahead and take it and we're going to seize it and we're going to sell it. And we're going to keep the money until you can prove that you should have it back.
I mean, there was a large, very public court case in Philadelphia where a kid like under 18. He was living with his aunt, and he was selling some drugs out the back door of her house. We're not talking about a drug trafficker
Right.
with pounds of marijuana or pounds of cocaine or whatever. We're talking about slinging a couple drugs on the corner, and the cops end up raiding the house and taking the house from the aunt, saying that it was involved in the sale of drugs, and like she didn't have the money to hire an attorney to get the house back. Like,
Right.
that seems like an overreach. All right, amendment number 6. In all criminal prosecutions, the accuser shall enjoy the rights to a speedy and public trial. That's a big one. By an impartial jury. Hey, look, yeah, whatever. To an impartial jury of the state and district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and the cause of the accusation, to be confronted with the witness against him. That's a big one. Confronting your own witnesses, and to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in your favor. That's great. And to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. So, look,
this is one of the things that the government, and this is one of the few positive rights. The government has to supply you with an attorney. You know what I mean? We've all watched enough cop shows growing up and we all kind of have the Miranda rights memorized. You have the right to remain silent. If you cannot afford an attorney will be appointed to you. Every jurisdiction maintains a public defender's office, and so that's great. And here's what you have to remember: everyone always jokes around about a speedy and public trial by an impartial. Well, a speedy and public trial, and they're like, oh, they drag on forever. Yeah, they drag on forever, but they move forward. It's not like Man in the Iron Mask days, which, by the way, is a great book. Where you can just lock someone up and you're like, yeah, we'll get around to trying them someday. We'll just leave them there for a while and hope they confess. And if they confess, we'll sentence them and let them out. No, right. We've got to be actually moving this trial forward. And that's what America could or would look very different if we didn't at least try to keep trials moving forward.
That's right. And this is one of the things that has been protested, where you have people sitting in jail because they can't afford the bail, which we're gonna talk about coming up real soon here. What is that? The 8th Amendment, I guess.
Yep.
But whereas people sit in jail because they can't afford the bail for a year and a half before going to trial. I mean, like, there are some things that these amendments were built for that aren't being upheld, I don't think. But I do love confronting the witness, and you have the right to present witnesses on your behalf. That's a big deal. That's a really big deal.
Because you've got to be able to know, Judah, the allegation is that you are cooking your books in your mortgage company. Okay, well, who said that?
Right.
Oh, Josh said that? Oh, Josh has another mortgage company that's a rival of mine. And also, by the way, do you know that he did blah, 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 blah? So you can assault the character of your witness as a way of defending yourself. So this is a very important way of making sure that the government doesn't abuse its ability to prosecute people, and people can't weaponize the prosecution of the government.
Right.
Prosecution through the government.
Trial by jury, amendment number 7. This is a big deal. The idea behind this is that you have the right to a jury of your peers, which means the community around you has a right to make a decision, and it's not left up to the king or the one judge or the one person that can hold something over you. So in suit of a common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, the right of a jury by trial shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise reexamined in any court of the United States than according to the law, the rules of the common law. So, number one, you got the right to a jury, and once that verdict's been decided, we're saying you can't just go shop it to the next, right down the next courthouse and bring the case right back up. I mean, it creates finality and a conclusion to the situation. That's a big deal. It's a big deal.
Absolutely. This is one of those funny things that legal scholars really argue about the importance of this one, and is it redundant, and do we need it, and
Yeah. All right. Amendment 8. Excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. I mean, usually the last part of that is what people focus on, but I think the first part of that has probably the biggest impact on our society as a whole at this point in history, and is, I'm not behind all of the demands of the Black Lives Matter movement, but I'll tell you what, this one, the excessive bail, I could get behind that 100%. I think that there's a lot of inequality when it comes to setting bail amounts and keeping people in prison when they shouldn't be.
I think the other thing that's important to call out about this is, so I'm a textualist, I'm an originalist in most cases, but I also think that there is flexibility in some of these amendments. And when we look at cruel and unusual, those are very flexible, malleable terms that apply differently today than what would have been applied back then. Back then, it wouldn't have been cruel or unusual to literally tar and literally feather somebody.
Yeah.
Or actually, probably they would have considered that cruel and unusual, but there's other things that they wouldn't have considered cruel and unusual that we would today. So,
hanging, the death penalty, other things.
I hate when people talk about the Constitution being a living document and an active document. No, there's a way to amend the Constitution, and that's what you're supposed to do. But it's also not a stale, crusty, dead document either. There is some room for flexibility, and this is the most notable case of what we're talking about today, where we see flexibility, that where just society in the general advent of, as the evolution of terms, these things can change, and I think there's other places as well where we see that.
Yeah, that's awesome. The 9th and 10th Amendment are really similar. You want to read this one, Judah?
Yeah, I'm surprised that you didn't put these together. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. So, enumeration, meaning the listing in the Constitution of certain rights, shall not be construed to deny, meaning take away, or disparage, meaning infringe or encroach upon others retained by the people, meaning just because we list what some of your rights are doesn't mean that you obviously have other rights that we're just not going to go through the part of saying. And this specifically applies to people. So the people still have rights, even though we're not listing them all or talking about them all here.
That's right.
The 10th Amendment basically says the same thing for the states.
Yeah, the power is not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people.
Right.
The power is in the people, and I mean these are a list of rights that limit the power of the federal government.
A good example here is zoning, right? So there's no zoning laws or rules or whatever outlaid in the Constitution. So therefore, the states have the ability to come up with how zoning is handled in their own state. And in Pennsylvania, we do that at a county level and at a municipal level. And counties are basically departments of the state. So you have to remember that, all of the states come together and form the federal government, but the state decides to break itself up into counties. They're two separate forms of government. So when people say to me, when the state does things, I'm a small government guy, and people, when the state does things, I often hear people say, "Oh, Judah, that sounds like big government. I thought you weren't, in favor of big government." I'm like, no, the state has decided to do that, not the federal government. So if the state decides to do X, Y, Z, it is within the state's right to do X, Y, Z. That's what federalism is all about.
That's right. That's right. And you know what? If you don't like the rules of your state, you can move. and you can, you know, you don't like what New York's doing, you can move to New Jersey. You don't like New Jersey, you can go to Pennsylvania. But when we have a huge federal government, you got to leave the country. I mean, that's
right. It's also a lot easier to enact change at a smaller level. It's a lot easier to enact change at a state level than it is to enact change at a national level.
That's right. That's right. Guys, I mean, we're a little bit long here. It's the day before.
I'm so impressed with how slow we got started that we got done with all that in 40 minutes, my friend. Virtual high five.
High five. Yeah.
You did great.
You guys enjoy yourselves. Wear those face masks this weekend. Enjoy the independence. Enjoy this amazing country that we have. We'll be back here, not Monday, but we're going to be back on Tuesday with a show at noon. We'll be rocking and rolling then. If you have any input, you have any questions in the meantime, reach out to Judah or myself. If you need a hard money loan, hit me up. You need to buy or sell a house, or have your property managed, reach out to Judah. Thanks so much. Have a great Independence Day, and we'll see you next week. Take care.